Previously on Slugscape.
All of that is to say that while I might in the future come off as overly positive towards Renegade Game Studios on this channel, it's not because I'm a bought and paid for shill. At least not yet.
And now, the conclusion.
Hey folks, Akiri lost its wings today. RR Slugger has sold out. After nearly 4 years on YouTube, what you're watching right now is my very first sponsored video. Renegade Game Studios was kind enough to send me all of the February premium painted figures so that I could talk about them here on my channel. Before we do that though, let's talk about how this affects what I'm gonna say. Firstly, I think it completely invalidates my opinion on value for money. That being said, folks who have seen my LEGO videos likely already know that I rarely, if ever, speak to whether or not a set is worth it. Monetary value and value for money are such relative terms, and every individual has a different income or means of living. Honestly, I personally find it to be a pretty worthless metric to consider in a video like this. You have to decide if the product is worth the cost. Don't let some influencer do that for you. Secondly, while I already held Renegade in high esteem, receiving something for free will have a tangible positive impact on the things that I say. I'm under no formal obligation or contract to only say nice things, but come on, it's free stuff. Of course I'm gonna have nice things to say about that. It honestly irks me when other reviewers on YouTube lack the self-awareness to recognize that the context in which you acquire something does in fact color the way you view it. Hopefully this transparency is appreciated. With that disclaimer in mind, let's look at these new figures together. I want to start with a fan favorite. This is Sonlin, back again in the Age of Annihilation. Sonlin is an elven archmage who first appeared in the Swarm of the Morrow master set all the way back in 2007. From a figure design perspective, the original Sonlin is one of my favorites from Classicscape, and often finds himself in armies I create for new players. Both of his abilities are tied to a D20 roll, and sort of turn him into a Swiss Army knife with tools for a variety of situations. His pet dragon, Velsa, can heal friendly figures and strike at distant opponents, both with a roll of 15 or higher. Paired with potent cantrips that Sonlin can cast out to a range of 6, an order marker placed on him is rarely ever a turn wasted. To me, this is one of the greatest strengths of his design. The D20 abilities feel like bonuses rather than dependencies. If you get them, great. If not, no worries, you still get a powerful ranged attack. The most direct comparison showing us how not to do this is with Moorsbane, a fellow elven wizard. Moorsbane also has a versatile ranged D20 ability with his Rod of Negation. However, what he lacks is a ranged attack, meaning that if you place an order marker on Moorsbane, you're likely banking your entire turn on the promise of a successful D20 roll. He's simply not built for duking it out in the trenches. If I could change one thing on Moorsbane's card, it would be his range stat. Either give him a range of 6 to match Rod of Negation, or give him the 7 range that is inexplicably listed on the back of his card, for some reason. Regardless, Moorsbane wishes he could be Sonlin. But does he wish he could be Sonlin 2.0? Well, the answer is probably also yes, as Sonlin looks sluggin' awesome in Age of Annihilation. Velsa is now all grown up, and Sonlin gains a whole new suite of abilities as a result. Let's take a look at them. The simplest, and most obvious, is that Velsa can fly. Even though this power is so ubiquitous with Heroscape that they no longer print it in full on the card, it still has a significant impact on the way a figure handles and shouldn't be overlooked. Additionally, it ties into his next power, Dragon Assault. When Sonlin attacks an adjacent figure or destructible object, he may attack one additional time. If Sonlin used his flying special power this turn, roll one additional combat die on the first attack. Not bad. Sonlin can also still make use of Velsa's healing ability. Now, Sonlin can choose to heal an adjacent figure or any single friendly figure that he flew over during his turn, with a 13 or higher on the d20. Notably, however, this no longer allows Sonlin to heal himself, which his previous iteration could do each turn. Personally, I'm kind of torn on this design. The lack of self-healing combined with a weaker than average defense for a double-spaced figure is certainly cause for concern. Actually, when I first saw the card revealed, my initial reaction was that this was all a straight downgrade from his previous self. However, with time, I've come to understand that this Sonlin is just very different from his Swarm of the Morrow counterpart. As mentioned earlier, that feeling of bonus abilities is largely what came to define the original Sonlin for me. This version doesn't capture that, but I also don't think it tries to. It has a nearly identical stat line, but a very different set of tools. I look forward to trying out what this new Sonlin has to offer. The other figure included in this set is Helucia, Scion of the Wild. While not a fan favorite like Sonlin, Helucia is actually the figure I was most excited for from this arc. Standing tall as a ferocious Dryan centaur, Helucia has a beastly stat line for only 120 points. 7 life, 7 move, 5 attack? Sign me up! Not only that, but he also has access to a trio of abilities to get even more value from the card. His first, Command Familiar, is a popular one among the other Dryans we've seen so far. You mean to tell me that my new favorite figure in Age of Annihilation bonds with my old favorite figure from Age of Annihilation?
Yes!
His second ability, Rouse the Glade, is so delightfully thematic. When Helucia attacks a figure next to a tree or bush, they actually lose a defense die as nature betrays them. I love this! Just when your opponent takes cover from your archer's onslaught, Helucia bursts out of the start zone, boosted by Akalar and his Ullar's Amulet. I can't wait to play a build like this. Lastly, Helucia has the ability to execute a ride-by special attack, allowing him to assault up to 3 figures during a move that does not provoke leaving engagement attacks. Overall, a really solid tool set, one that will see a lot of play at my table. Not to play favorites or get all sentimental on you, but I've been on Team Ullar ever since Wave 4 came out way back in the day. He's had some ups and downs since then, mostly downs if I'm honest, but to get an all Ullar boxed release like this, well, it's special to me. Since I don't know if it'll ever happen again, I'm really gonna take it in while I can.
My God, Carol, look at it.
Moving on to the Oops, All Bears set, we receive Knight Primus Adalburn and his Ordo Borealis squad. Let's start with Adalburn himself. Wielding a truly frightening war club, Knight Primus Adalburn stands poised to dish out the pain. His figure blends in well with the Frostclaw Paladins from the Master set, though some might say a little too well. This could be fairly easily solved though if you go the unpainted route and give him some colored signifiers. Looking at his army card gives me a sigh of relief. Simple scape. I love it. With only a single power, Knight Primus is well suited for frontline combat, empowered by Crushing Blow. After moving and before attacking, Adalburn can automatically inflict a wound upon any small or medium squad or common hero figure next to him. No d20 roll required. This feels very similar to the guaranteed damage of a figure like Grimnack with his reliable Chomp ability. Sometimes d20 rolls are needed to keep a figure's power in check. Other times they feel completely pointless. I think giving Adalburn this ability without tying it to a d20 roll is a smart design decision and adds a degree of consistency to his value in an army. I expect we'll be seeing him a lot on the fields of Valhalla. The Ordo Borealis bring a ranged component into the Ursine army, though they do so in an interesting way. Armed with harpoon guns, these bears can be deadly from afar, using their sole ability, Reload. If an Ordo Borealis does not move on its turn, it may add 6 to its range value for the rest of that turn. Is this a glorified Wait Then Fire? I'm not sure yet. On one hand, it does encourage a similar style of gameplay that I'm not a fan of. But on the other hand, it feels distinct in that Reload changes the range stat, not the attack stat. This might mean that there will be more tactical movements made using the Ordo Borealis, as a player doesn't lose attack power from relocation. However, this might also result in the opposite, as reducing their range by 6 each time a repositioning is necessary might forbid any attacks from being made in the first place. It's worth noting that Reload can be used figure by figure, whereas Wait Then Fire affects the whole squad. This means that one bear could retreat from an engagement while the other two use Reload to rain hell down from afar, as an example. I like this, but I'm worried about how abusable it may become. The Ordo Borealis are knights, just like the Frostclaws, which means that they benefit from having Konkan the Kiri warrior next to them. Granting a +1 to their attack and defense, Konkan alone can elevate the Ordo to unparalleled heights. With Konkan, if the Ordo have the high ground, they're rolling 3 attacks of 5 at 7 range with 6 defense and 2 life. How do you break that? I think a lot of armies will simply lack an answer for this level of power, resulting in a slaughter. There are only 6 figures in the game that can outrange the Ordo, and if these harpoon-launching bears do become a frequent enough sight on the battlefield, I think we'll start seeing a guy like Savaris in more armies. The final boxed set contains a single figure, the Hellforge Manticore. This beastly figure barely fits upon its base, and has tendrils outstretched to devour anything in its path. A key part of Revna's growing Isanek army, the Hellforge has several abilities to help it control the battlefield. There's that wall of text we've come to know and love from modern Heroscape. In fairness though, it's not so bad here. Many of these abilities are rather straightforward. Blast Furnace 15 subjects any who stand near the Hellforge to its unbearable heat, forcing you to roll a d20 for every adjacent figure at any point during its turn. Friend or foe, the Hellforge doesn't care. On a 15 or higher, that figure receives a wound. This quite literally feeds into its second ability, Feed the Forge 15. Whenever an adjacent figure is destroyed, you can roll the d20. On a 15 or higher, remove a wound from the Hellforge. There's a bonus to your roll if the adjacent figure was Soulborg, Isanek, or a destructible object, but by and large, this is just a healing ability, and a good one at that. Isanek Advance is the last ability on the card, and it feels very similar to something that the Death Chasers of Thesk do quite well, charging into battle without the use of an order marker. At the start of a round, if all of your order markers are on Isanek army cards, you can immediately move the Hellforge Manticore up to 4 spaces. Notably, this free movement does not trigger Blast Furnace 15. That design decision seems rather fiddly at first, but I imagine the alternative would be too powerful. Getting a chance to hurt or destroy your opponent's figures before initiative is even rolled would probably feel pretty cheap for both players. All told, I think the Hellforge Manticore is the missing piece that the Isonex from Revna's Rebuke desperately needed. I played many games with and against them and was always left severely underwhelmed. The Hellforge should now be the catalyst that stokes the fires of this army. And those are the figures released within the Rising Tide arc so far. What do you think of them? Let me know in the comment section below. Thanks for watching, everyone. I've been your host, R.R. Slugger. And until next time, happy scaping.